So Eleanor Hill could tell us the story of a Saudi government employee based in California, a man named Omar al-Bayoumi.
According to the report, at least one, the FBI's best source in San Diego, suggested Bayoumi may be a Saudi intelligence officer. You can then say that Mr. Bayoumi, according to the report, did certainly help and assist the hijackers, at least two of them.
Those two 9/11 hijackers were Khalid al-Mihdhar and Nawaf al-Hazmi. They were Saudis too, and reportedly the first of the 19 hijackers to enter the U.S. Guess who was there to meet them?
Basically, Mr. Bayoumi had significant contacts with Mihdhar and Hazmi in California. He put down the deposit for them on their apartment there. He threw a party for them.
Helped them enroll in flight school.
He tasked another individual to act as their translator, help them enroll in flight schools.
Not only does the congressional report detail the Saudi support for those two hijackers, it also reveals how much American intelligence already knew about them by the time they got to San Diego. They'd been under surveillance at a high-level al-Qaeda meeting abroad, where U.S. agents certainly suspected they were planning future terror attacks. The CIA knew their names, birth dates, passport numbers. They knew one of them had a U.S. entry visa, which likely meant they'd planned to travel there. But despite it all, the CIA somehow neglected to warn other U.S. agencies about them, which meant that al-Mihdhar and al-Hazmi were able to enter the country without a problem and settle in San Diego, even amazingly renew their U.S. visas so they could stay legally until they played their part on September the 11th.
Yeah.
Congressional investigator Eleanor Hill says it was perhaps the single most crucial intelligence failure before 9/11.
Had the FBI been told that and been aware of that back in January 2000, things may have been very different. We had the FBI agent from San Diego who handled that informant testify in our closed hearing that he believes that had he had that information from the CIA, he would have been able to stop this, because he believes he would have had what he called a full court press in terms of investigation on Mihdhar and Hazmi while they were living in San Diego.
But in fact, it wasn't until August 2001 that the two Saudis in San Diego were finally put on the U.S. watch list. By then, it was tragically too late. 3 weeks afterwards, they crashed American Airlines Flight 77 into the Pentagon.
Abdullah is well aware of the challenges facing him at home. And internationally, Saudi policies were being questioned since the revelation that 15 of the 19 terrorists who attacked on 9/11 were Saudi citizens. In 2002, families of those who perished brought a $1 trillion lawsuit against Arab banks, charitable organizations, and 3 Saudi royal princes, including Prince Sultan, the defense minister, and Prince Turki Al Faisal, ambassador to Britain. The lawsuit charged that they had supported terrorist groups like Al-Qaeda, responsible for the attack on the World Trade Center and the Pentagon.
Although we cannot prove that high-ranking Saudi officials committed this atrocity, we know for a certainty that they were the terrorists' travel agents who delivered them well-fed, well-trained, and well-equipped to the World Trade Center that day.
The lawsuit added to the already strained relations between Saudi Arabia and the United States, and the royal family threatened to take billions of its assets out of America.
U.S. senators held a hearing on the financial support of terrorism. They asked government officials to provide the names of the Saudi charities and individuals who've been investigated for funding al-Qaeda.
I know the chairman tried very hard and others have tried very hard to get this information, so let me try again. Okay. Are the names of those entities classified? The names classified that you have recommended for listing? It's a yes or no question.
The names themselves are not classified.
Then I think you ought to present them to us today.
I don't have them with me.
Mr. Newcomb.
Senators were promised they'd get the names the next day. But overnight, the Bush administration classified them. That list, with the names of the Saudis suspected of financing Osama bin Laden, would not be made public, after all.
As an individual that was affiliated with...
When George Bush Sr. became president, as with George W. more than a decade later, the Saudis occupied a special place at the White House. The Oval Office always open to one man, Saudi Arabia's ambassador, Prince Bandar. What is it that George W. Bush calls Bandar? Bandar Bush?
Bandar Bush, yeah, calls him Bandar Bush.
الأمن السعودي كان متابع.
Saudi security was actively following the movements of most of the terrorists with precision.
ولو الجهات الأمنية الأمريكية
U.S. security authorities had engaged their Saudi counterparts in a serious and credible manner, in my opinion, we would have avoided what happened.
I'd flown to Washington to meet an ex-Secret Service agent who's never spoken publicly before.
Mr. Caruso, I'm Jane Corbin. Nice to meet you.
Welcome.
Thank you very much. Thanks.
David Caruso is an expert in money laundering and found out a great deal about Prince Bandar's financial arrangements in America. After 9/11, when most of the al-Qaeda hijackers turned out to be Saudi, Mr. Caruso was called in by the ambassador's bankers, Riggs Bank. They wanted to find out if any funds were going to terrorists from the Saudi embassy.
Those funds were in Prince Bandar's account and his wife's account.
So there was substantial amounts of cash?
Yes, there were large sums. It was a large relationship. It was a $100+ million relationship.
$100+ million.
Yes.
Mr. Caruso did identify many suspicious transactions in some of the embassy accounts.
What we discovered was clearly large movements of money, both cash and other types of money, that we simply could not understand.
And was the Saudi ambassador himself, Prince Bandar, prepared to tell you what lay at the root of all this?
We were never able to get those answers.
And did you worry? Did you think this sounds fishy?
Absolutely.
Riggs Bank could never get satisfactory answers from Bandar or his embassy, so they closed down all their accounts. Within months, the prince had resigned as ambassador for personal reasons and headed back to Saudi. Prince Bandar declined an interview, but his lawyers have admitted payments were made into Riggs Bank with the UK and Saudi government's approval. Bandar was a signatory, they said, but the money went for purposes approved by the Saudi Ministry of Defense, not for him personally. But the big question remains, why were such huge payments made by such a secretive and convoluted route, and what were they for? Here's a last word from the prince on the subject of corruption.
We did not invent corruption. This happened since Adam and Eve. I mean, Adam and Eve were in heaven, and they had hanky-panky, and they had to go down to earth. So, I mean, this is human nature. But we are not as bad as you think.
After George Bush Sr. left office and became a senior advisor to the powerful international investment firm, the Carlyle Group, he paid a number of visits on their behalf to his good friends, the Saudi royal family and the bin Ladens.
A very nice reunion with friends. I'm very pleased to see you.
They soon became Carlyle clients. Incredibly, on September 11th, Bush and the head of the bin Laden family would be at the same Carlyle Group meeting in Washington, just a few miles from where Osama bin Laden's hijackers would attack the Pentagon.
9/11 was not an intelligence failure. 9/11 was an intelligence success. It was supposed to happen. The moment in time when the world accepted that the intelligence justifying the invasion of Iraq was a lie, that we were sold a war on false pretenses, then 9/11 has to be on the table too. Clearly the United States government could have prevented the attacks. and the United States government held the door open and allowed those attacks to happen.
That seems to be the common denominator of most 9/11 conspiracy theories, that somehow the U.S. government knew those attacks were coming, yet let them take place anyway.